guys, and welcome back to my channel. First of all, before we get started on this June wrap up, I'd just like to say the most sincerest and heartfelt thank you to every single person who commented on my previous video about what happened to me last week. I really don't want to dwell on it anymore. I've deleted those people off Twitter and YouTube, and hopefully I will never see their faces again. But it just shows how wonderful this community is and how much we can stamp out those few horrible comments and things to make this such a wonderful and accepting and welcoming community. So moving on from all of that, pushing it all to one side, we'll leave that be. I'm going to be doing my June wrap up, but I'm also going to do my currently reading. I'm also going to review a couple of plays that I've been seeing recently because that was all within the month of June, and I thought it'd be nice to incorporate that, being as I got such wonderful feedback from my play video. So in the month of June I read a grand total of 4 books. Not my best, definitely. Obviously I was dealing with some crap, so I couldn't properly get down and read, and after it happened I was in such a reading slump that I didn't really want to read much, but I have started quite a few books since, so we've got a few currently readings to go through. In the month of June I decided to set myself a challenge. No particular reason why, it wasn't any read along or anything like that, but I wanted to try and read a book from as many different genres as I could. So the first book that I picked up this month was something a little bit different for me, and that was You Had Me at Hello by Mahari McFarlane. I absolutely love this book. I really don't want to use the word chick lit because I really am so against that genre in every way possible, but it is general adult fiction with a bit of humour. You know, it's very light reading, it's nice and easy to read, but that doesn't mean that the characters aren't in depth and complex. You know, the characters of Rachel and Ben, the main characters of this, are very established, well-rounded, developed characters. They were very interesting and realistic to read from. I suppose you could call this book a romance book, which is something that I don't usually go for. The main character, Rachel, is very hilarious and interesting character to read from, and she had a university best friend called Ben. She's engaged at the start of the book to a really horrible guy called Reese, and she ends up breaking up with him, and all of a sudden she bumps into Ben, who she hasn't seen in 10 years after a very awkward incident happened with her and her ex-fiance Reese. Well, there were a few twists in it that I wasn't necessarily expecting coming, but I mean it ended probably as you would expect it to end. I would totally give this 4 stars. The next book I read is a children's book, and I don't know what happened to the dust jacket of this, but this is Rent a Bridesmaid, Jacqueline Wilson's new book. So this book centres around a young girl of the age of about 9 or 10 called Tilly, and Tilly really wants to be bridesmaid but sort of knows she has no proper relative, she probably will never be, so she pops an advertisement in a local newsagent's as a rent a bridesmaid, and unbeknown to her she actually gets 4 or 5 responses, and you get a sense of loads and loads of different weddings and styles and things. Something that I think Jacqueline Wilson does really well is she has a gay couple in one of the weddings, and it's so wonderful, and it's never even referenced, like it's just woven into the story. There's no need for like an explanation towards it. I think that's really excellent, and obviously as a kid I would have just glossed over that anyway, but hopefully that's encouraging children to, you know, realise that it is completely the norm to have a gay wedding. I'd probably give this 3.5 stars. I mean, it was a fun read. It's definitely, I don't think, not as good as her older books. The next book that I read was actually a recommendation from my boyfriend, and that was The Reason I Jump, which is One Boy's Voice from the Silence of Autism, which is introduced by David Mitchell. This young boy has invented a way of response. Obviously autistic children tend to find it incredibly difficult to speak their opinions. Reading an autistic child's perspective so fluently was so wonderful and refreshing to read, and I really enjoyed it in that aspect. I found some of the questions quite repetitive. I think 3 or 4 times David Mitchell asked him basically the same question and he gave a very similar response, and I was a little bit unsure as to why they'd repeated the question so many times. If you're interested in David Mitchell, or you're interested in finding out a little bit more about autism, I definitely recommend you pick this up. It's quite hard to rate, so I'd probably give it 4 stars, but I would definitely recommend you picking this up. It's a very short read. It only took me about 20-25 minutes to read, and I really enjoyed it. The best book by far that I read this month was the wonderful A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Archibald. This is a short story collection. I did this as a buddy read with Josie from Scribbles Reads, and we had such an amazing time discussing every short story in the collection and going into such depth. You know, we talked about these stories for hours and hours, and it was so wonderful to sort of get each insight, and we both took completely different things from each one. I also did a mini review of this in my short story collections video, which I'll leave a little tab have up there for you to see if you're interested in hearing a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, hands down 5 stars, definitely one of the best short story collections I've ever read. It will definitely be in my top 10 books of the year. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to move on to some that I'm currently reading. I'm about halfway through this one at the moment, but that's Britt Murray Was Here by Fredrik Backman. I was sent this for review. I was so excited about it because I'd requested it, because Fredrik Backman, if you don't know, wrote A Man Called Ove, which was one of my favourite books of last year. I absolutely adored it, so when I heard that this was coming out, I had to get my hands on a copy. Britt Murray is such an eccentric character, like I can't even begin to describe how much I love her. She's recently just broken up with her husband, and it's really interesting to see this very scary, if I'm completely honest, character development. Somebody might ask her for a drink, say, do you want a cup of tea? And she'd say, oh, my husband doesn't like tea. All of her opinions, likes and dislikes are based completely on her husband's, and after they're broken up she's sort of coming to terms with that and realising actually that she was, you know, completely relying off her husband, and it is so heartbreaking in some ways. But like I said, I'm only halfway through this. It's just getting to sort of the climax of the story, and I'm absolutely loving it. So yeah, watch out for this in my July wrap up. But I think this is out now, so if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend you go and grab a copy of this. The next book, which again I'm about halfway through and absolutely adoring, but this is something I put down when I was sort of in my reading slump. Again, I don't know what's happened to the dust jacket, but it's The Butcher's Hook by Janet Ellis. I'm really excited to sort of get stuck into this properly. It's something that I would have preferred to read sort of all in one go, because it is a very in-depth depiction of Victorian life. That's all I'm going to really say about that, because again, hopefully that'll be in my July wrap up, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Next, I have decided to give Kafka on the Shore by Murakami a go. This is my first ever Murakami. This was recommended to me to read for the first one. I know that there's lots of similarities in Murakami's work, and I'm really excited to finally pick one up. I've only, you know, 20-25 pages in, but I really like the writing style. It sounds really interesting to me, so again, hopefully you'll see this in my July wrap up. And finally, another book that I'm really excited to get stuck into is another proof copy, which is Walking the Lights by Deborah Andrews. This is about a young actor called Maddie, and she's a want-to-be actor, and her and her friends decide to put on a production of The Tempest. Now, I have never seen The Tempest, but I'm going to see it in December, but it's my boyfriend's favourite Shakespeare play, so I'm really excited about that. I love reading books about actors, obviously. It's quite rare nowadays that you do have a novel that's driven by a wannabe actor, especially somebody in their 20s, and thank you so much to Frank for sending these to me. I can't wait to get stuck into this and read it, and again, hopefully you'll see this in my July wrap up. Finally, a couple of plays. The first play that I went to see this month was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This was about the soul singer Ma Rainey and her famous recording sessions. She was not a nice person. She was quite a diva. She brought blues music more into the mainstream. I actually studied her a little bit in my pop culture module at university. The woman that played her had the most incredible voice. It sounded just like Ma Rainey. Unfortunately now, if you were interested in seeing that, it has finished. The next play that I went to see was actually an opera, but not your typical opera. I went to see the Threepenny Opera. This stars, as you can see, Rory Kinnear, who's one of my favourite actors of all time. And oh my god, this was so good. If you're interested at all in musicals, or sort of the Rocky Horror, Sweeney Todd vibe to musicals, definitely go and see the Threepenny Opera. You will absolutely love it. It's hilarious, it's filthy, it's raunchy, it's wonderful. It's on until the end of September. I've actually booked to go and see it again on the 10th of September. I'm forcing my boyfriend to go because I know he's going to enjoy it. The last play that I went to see, which I only went to see last week, was The Deep Blue Sea by Terence Rattingham. Terence Rattingham is a early 1900s playwright who completely went out of fashion in the 60s and 70s, and now he's becoming much more in fashion, and loads of his plays are being done. They're all set in Second World War in England. They're all sort of middle class dramas, I suppose you could say. They're very traditional plays. It was quite nice and refreshing, funnily enough, to see just a play with middle-class English characters, you know, going through trials and tribulations, and then it also involves World War II. I really enjoyed it. As you can see, this stars Helen McCrory, who's really popular at the moment on Peaky Blinders, and she's absolutely fantastic. I love this. Again, if you want to see this, this is on until about the end of August, so definitely recommend you go and grab these. I would like to say at the National Theatre as well. It is in London, but if you're interested in going to see anything, If you're a student, you can grab tickets for £5, or if you want to go on the day, you can actually get £10 to £15 tickets, which is absolutely amazing. I think that's everything. That seemed like quite a big wrap up, even though I only actually read 4 books in the month. If you've got any comments, suggestions, anything that you think I'd like to read, or anything that I've mentioned here, if you've read anything, please let me know down below. I hope you've all had a lovely, lovely week. Thank you again for all the amazing feedback on my previous video. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, I will see you in my next video. Bye!